For the purposes of this demonstration, I've brought in two PDF files that you can get from the R drive. This is called Plan 1620, and you can see the path is at following location. And the other one that I've loaded is the elevation 1620, and it should be in the same folder at that location. Use the image command and make sure you're browsing for PDFs. Bring them in at a scale of 48 so that they're actual size. I've also set up some layers. So these layers are for the various lines and reference points that we make for the two-point perspective. You'll need a construction layer, ground layer, horizon. MPL stands for measuring point left. MPR stands for measuring point right. We'll need an objects line layer. That will be the only one that will be set to print. Picture plane, station point, vertical measuring line, vanishing point, and actually that looks like a redundant one because we can use vanishing point right and vanishing point left. So this extra vanishing point one doesn't necessarily, oh, I know what that is. That's actually the viewport. So let me rename that, so it's not confused with vanishing point. Whoops. Okay, so that's all set. Notice all the layers, or the layers are set to no print except for object line, and that's also the only one that's set to a 0.5 line weight. And we're ready to begin. I'm going to start with setting up my picture plane. One other thing, my units have been set to architectural. My limits have been set to 0, 0 for the lower limits. And for the upper limits, they're set to 200 by 200. So that's giving me plenty of room to draw. So with my picture plane, I'm going to use the line command, or you can use X line. And I want to create a horizontal line and just draw that anywhere on the screen. I'm also going to want to create a ground line and a horizon line. So I'm going to use the midpoint of this line to track up and put it at a distance of 5 feet. And just put those on those respective layers. So this should be on the ground layer. This line should be on the horizon layer. And then we have the picture plane. Once you've got that set up, go ahead and move your PDF of your, either if you're using this one or your own, to the ground line. So I'm going to use the nearest object snap to do that. Just kind of move it off to the side. And then we're going to take our plan and rotate it so that we're seeing the sides of the house that we'd like to see. So I'm going to rotate the plan using the corner here. We'll rotate it 60 degrees. And then I'm going to move this view so that I'm going to eyeball that corner here of the PDF image and bring it as, right on top of the picture plane. So this is going to be how we create our vertical measuring line. It's going to go from this corner of the building down to the ground line. So I'm going to go ahead and use the vertical measuring line layer to do that. And again, you're going to have to eyeball about where you think that corner is. I'm going to use the nearest object snap to make sure I'm going on the picture plane. And then just make sure that this line is absolutely straight and goes down to the ground line. Now what I do after this is I don't really need this to be the full length. So I use a lengthen command and set the total length to 50 feet. I'm just going to chop this off at the 50-foot mark so that I know now that's exactly 50 feet. And then we can use measure and select the object. Make sure you're selecting towards the endpoint that's on top of the ground line so that it starts measuring from that point. So I'm going to pick that line and put in a node at every 1 foot. So now I have a node at every 1 foot. Now you notice that my nodes didn't come out really huge. The reason for that, and also I've got nodes that have show up a lot better. The reason for that is DDP type. You may want to set that to something that you can see a little bit better on the screen. So any one of these marks. And then I've got this set to set absolute size or absolute units to 5 inches so that those nodes don't get oversized. So you might want to do the same. All right, now we're ready to set up our station point. So I'm going to go to the station point layer, and I want to select a point. So I'm going to use PO for point that is approximately, let's go like this. We'll do temporary tracking. I want to be about in front of the door, and then I want to track down about 30 feet. So that's going to be where my station point is. From the station point, it's a good idea to check to see if this is positioned well. I'm going to use the angle snap of 30 degrees and snap to a 30-degree angle from the perpendicular, and do the same thing in the opposite direction. And what that does is shows me if I've got my station point positioned so that my entire house will be within the cone of vision, and it looks like it is. It so happens that this line is actually going to come handy for us for finding our vanishing point, because this point where it crosses, notice that this line is parallel to the edge of the building, so that actually locates a vanishing point for us. So I'm going to put a point right there. And then for the other vanishing point, we need to use the line command, and because I use 30-degree angles, I can use the 30-degree angle increments, and that way this line and this edge of the building here, because they're perpendicular, will be parallel, and that finds my second vanishing point. So these two vanishing points are found by just making lines from the station point parallel to the face of the building in both directions. So these two vanishing points should be transferred down to the horizon line, and I'm going to do that by using my construction layer, and I'm going to use X line again. This time it's going to be a vertical line that goes through the 2 points that we found on the picture plane that help us to find our vanishing points on our horizon line. So to be specific, I'm going to put in my layers appropriately for each vanishing point. So this would be vanishing point left. Use the point command to create a vanishing point on that side, and then vanishing point right is on this side. All right, now all that's left to do is to transfer some information from our plan down to our work area here. So this is going to be where the two-point perspective will be, and this is the plan view that we're going to be working off of. I don't really need this cone of vision line anymore, but I do want to keep these 2 lines in as a reference for where we found our vanishing points. So I'm going to put those on the construction layer. And then I'm going to begin to create some references for the outline of the building. So I'm going to do that with the ray command. From the station point, zoom in and place your point or ray line as close as you can to the corner of the building in both directions. And kind of as we go, I'm going to erase these construction lines because it gets very busy and confusing if you don't do that. So what this is going to help us do is define the width of the building in both directions. We also need to define the floor line and the ceiling line of the walls. So I'm going to do that by transferring my height from the height of the wall. I'm eyeballing this from my sketch. Bring that over to my vertical measuring line, and it's just about hitting this mark here. So you can either use this point that you've projected off of your sketch, or if you would like to make it a nice even number, you can go from there if it's that close. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to use a object line and go from, whoops, I didn't mean to change that to an object line. So let's switch to an object layer and create a line from my vanishing point right through that node, and then I'm going to go all the way over to my vanishing point left, and then go to the base of the building, and then back over to my vanishing point right. So this is defining the top of the wall, bottom of the wall on the right side of the building, top of wall, bottom of wall on the left side of the building. And then these lines that we projected here to find the corners of the building, I use from the intersections where they intersect the picture plane, bring those down, and we have the width of the buildings in both directions. And then I just trim my lines here so that I don't get confused. And I'm going to add another line here so that I fill in that corner with my dark object lines. Now I've got my line weight set to toggle. If you don't have this control open, go over here to these 3 bars and make sure it's turned on. Line weights right here to turn those on. So it might be nice for you to be able to turn them on and off when you need to. Alright, I'm going to pause here and we're going to go to the next video to do the second section.